All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to learning about Miskiikenh turtles. My name is Delana Arnold, and I'm the Education and Program Manager for the Georgian Bay Minidogamy Biosphere, so Miigwech, and thank you very much for joining us today. As we still wait for a few more people to trickle in, I'm just going to share a little bit about the Georgian Bay Biosphere to get started. We are one of 18 UNESCO World Biosphere Reserves in Canada, and our region is ecologically unique with the largest freshwater archipelago on Earth. So the biosphere stretches about 200 kilometers from the Severn River in the south to the French River in the north, and it was designated in 2004. We're a registered charity with an administrative office in Parry Sound, and we rely on grants, partnerships, and donations to do our conservation and education work. So today's webinar is a part of the Community Nominated Priority Places Project, also now known as Mamwe Onjeakizawin, and Cheryl can correct me more later.
Good job.
So the Biosphere is one partner on this project. This is a special recognition by the federal government of the collective work being done for biodiversity conservation in this area. So this project and much of the Biosphere and our partners' ongoing work is striving to incorporate what's called two-eyed seeing. And so this is defined by Elder Albert Marshall as the ability to see with one eye with the strengths of Indigenous ways of knowing, and to see with the other eye with the strengths of Western ways of knowing, and to use both of these eyes together. So we are going to jump right in. We have a packed hour of information today, plus we want to be sure to get to all of your questions at the end. If you need to leave at 11 or at any point earlier, we understand. We do have until 11:30 today. If you can stay to the end, that's fantastic. We are recording today's session. We are already recording. It will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and a link will be circulated in an email tomorrow with a bunch of other resources that we're going to mention today as well. So I invite you now to wiggle your mouse and see some of the options at the bottom of the screen. And particularly, I want to point out the Q&A button. If you have a question at any time during the webinar, we ask you to please use this Q&A tool to ask us your question. It's really beneficial for helping to manage them, and it'll make sure we don't get any lost questions in the chat. All right, so before we begin, it looks like most people are here. We'd like to acknowledge the land. So we respect and recognize the inherent rights and governance of the Anishinaabe Pre-Confederation. We acknowledge the rights of the Anishinaabe as legally recognized in the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. Indigenous peoples in the area are of Ojibwe, Adawa, and Potawatomi lineage. Mohawk people from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy also reside in the area and have historical connections to both Southern and Eastern Ontario. The region is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Today's webinar, we're very lucky to be joined by not just one, but three spectacular guests. We have Alana Solaris, who's the species at-risk biologist, and she's going to start us off with some key turtle facts, ID, and ecological importance and threats. We have Cheryl Judge, speaking to turtles in the clan systems and their roles, and some Anishinaabe Moan too, I think. And Tiana Burke, who's going to share information on what we actually need to know to help turtles, some very specifics about finding injured turtles and ways to protect their nests. So I will now turn things over to our first speaker today, who is Alana.
Awesome. Miigwech, Alana. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? Perfect, and everybody can hear me okay? Wonderful, yeah, so welcome everybody, Minogajep, good morning. I'm gonna kick things off here, so I have the great privilege of starting, which is nerve-wracking, but also awesome, and I'm so excited to be here. Miigwech to the Biosphere for inviting me, so hopefully I can pique your interest if you aren't interested already about turtles. My name's Alana Smolars and Anishinaabe. And I am presenting from my office. I work at the Magnetawan First Nation Department of Lands and Resources. So without further ado, let's talk turtles. So just a little bit about me. I was fortunate enough to grow up at my family cottage on Georgian Bay, catching all things slithery, slimy, turtley, which definitely influenced my career choice. So I have an undergraduate and master's degree in science from McMaster. And like I said, I'm currently the species at risk biologist and program coordinator at Magnetawan First Nation. So I've had the great privilege of turning my childhood hobbies into my job. So it's very rare that I feel like I'm working on a daily basis. It's a lot of fun. So I'm going to be kind of blasting you with a whole bunch of turtle stuff today. But if you do want to read more about some specific turtle species, whether they're from the Georgian Bay area or just Ontario turtle species in general, you can head to Ontario Nature. They've got a great kind of atlas of species, not only just of turtles, but of all reptiles in Ontario. And these links and resources will be provided to you after today's webinar. So I strongly encourage you to go and visit and learn more about specific turtles. So Ontario specifically has 8 species of turtles. All of them are listed as species at risk. And some of the ones that are pictured here are ones that you are more likely to find in the Georgian Bay area. So can you guys see my mouse moving around there? Perfect. So we've got the painted turtle, the big and beautiful snapping turtle, the eastern musk turtle. I don't know if anyone's ever seen some baby hatchling snapping turtles, Blanding's turtles, and the northern map turtle, which is often mistaken for the snapping turtle. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of how turtles are classified in terms of their status in Ontario and Canada, there are federal and provincial listings of the species that are decided by 2 committees. So the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife in Canada and the Committee on the Status of Species at Risk in Ontario. So there are different classifications, sometimes associated with populations, but that's more so related to snakes. So when I say a species at risk, those species are either listed as special concern, threatened, endangered, or extirpated. So the species that are not at risk, data deficient, or have not been assessed are not technically considered species at risk. But again, this changes based on their federal and provincial listings. So of the 8 species in Ontario, you can kind of get an idea of their status here. So just recently, in 2018, the Midland painted turtle was added to the species at risk list for their federal status. So in Ontario, they're still technically not at risk because they haven't been assessed. And most of the other species, like I said, or all of the other species are considered species at risk. So the snapping turtle, northern map turtle, and eastern musk turtle are all special concern, both at the federal and provincial level. And then you've got the other species that are at higher risk that are threatened and endangered. There are other ways that a species can be protected though. So as you can see, there's a comment here. So the Midland painted turtle does have protection under the Ontario Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act. So that just protects the species, but not necessarily their habitat, which I'll talk about in a minute as well. So specific to Eastern Georgian Bay, which is a reptile and amphibian hotspot, it's the world's largest freshwater archipelago. So there's a whole mosaic of freshwater habitat for these turtles to exist, which makes it ideal for them to live here. So this range map specifically is for the Blanding's turtle. So you can see all along Eastern Georgian Bay is where they exist. A little bit more inland, but more so right along the coast. Many of them along Georgian Bay also exist at their northern range limit. So we're quite fortunate. I mean, a lot of people, when they think of Canada, they don't think that we have as many reptiles as we do, especially freshwater turtles. So it's pretty incredible to have this. So turtles are awesome. I could probably take up this whole webinar just talking about how much I love turtles and how incredible they are. So I'm just gonna rapid fire some cool facts about them. So some of you may or may not know, but their rib cage and technically their spine is incorporated into their shell. So I don't know, depending on how you're choosing to view today's webinar, you might be able to see me in the camera there. So I've got a few shells with me, if you can't see me, obviously refer to the pictures in the slide, but you can actually see their spine and their rib cage is incorporated into this hard shell, which is, it's bone, like it's made of bone. They're the only species that has this. Obviously tortoises, turtles have this kind of shell. So it makes them incredibly robust. unless they come in contact with a car. But it's likely what helped them survive or outlive the dinosaurs. And some of them still considered to be dinosaurs. If you look at a snapping turtle, I mean, my immediate thought is dinosaur. These bones are also, it's kind of like when you think of a puzzle piece, how well they fit together, which adds to their incredible robustness. So this is a picture of a shell that's kind of been broken up. So you can actually see the fragments of how the bones are incorporated. So it really is a pretty incredible body. So some other cool things that you might not know about turtles is because they exist in Canada and we have winters, they enter hibernation during the winter, but they have a really cool way of surviving. So their aquatic hibernation, that involves reducing their metabolism to extremely low levels. And in fact, it gets so low that they don't even technically, they don't surface, but they actually can absorb oxygen by the process of diffusion over their skin. And one of the most sensitive areas of their body where that skin can do that is their cloaca, or not technical terms, but the common term is their butt breathers. So the skin kind of around that area is so sensitive that it actually absorbs the oxygen, similar to like how amphibians breathe through their skin. The other cool thing about turtles, some Ontario turtles have temperature-dependent sex determination, which means when they're eggs, depending on the temperature that they're incubated in the nest cavity, they can either turn out female or male. So this becomes really important when you think of climate change and how warming temperatures will influence these. They've seen it quite a lot for sea turtles, where a lot of the eggs that are hatching are female just because of the rising temperatures. The other cool thing is we use different ways to identify turtles. So this is a Blanding's turtle, so you can tell because of the bright yellow chin. And as a researcher, we kind of like to identify different individuals of these turtles in our population. And one of the ways we do that is their blotch pattern. So not all species have this, but you can, if you turn a turtle over, that's called their plastron, their belly. And every single individual turtle has their own blotch pattern. So it's kind of like a fingerprint. So this is one of the ways that we use to identify different individuals of the species. Now, a lot of you guys might be wondering, what's the big deal? It's just a turtle. And some people don't realize how important turtles are. So they're more than just your average dock dweller or toe nibbler, which isn't actually true. They are incredible ecosystem, parts of the ecosystem. So snapping turtles especially are considered janitors of the waterway. So they kind of clean up anything that's dead or decaying. They are actively seeking out, that's their main food source. But they're also really good at indicating the health of an ecosystem. So for example, if there's not many turtles living in a wetland, then it's likely that there's something wrong. Obviously, the more biodiversity, the more likely that habitat is to be healthy. And their existence also impacts a lot of other species and systems in an ecosystem, which is why they're considered keystone species. And as Cheryl is going to be talking about a little bit later, they have an incredible level of cultural significance. So I'll leave that to Cheryl to touch on. So unfortunately, turtles are threatened by many, many things. As I mentioned before, road mortality is one of their greatest threats. There's also nest predation, which is a huge problem, habitat loss related to land use change and climate change, as well as exploitation in the form of poaching, which can be for the pet trade, but also as a food source. So like I said, one of the main threats is road mortality. And I don't know if many of you have seen this. This is a very common map that a lot of researchers will throw up, is just to demonstrate how dense the road network is in Ontario. Luckily, Eastern Georgian Bay, as you can see here, isn't too dense, but it's very rare that you can go even a kilometer without hitting a road. And you have to think, when turtles are trying to move across the land, that's likely what they're going to interact with. So this is a very common sight across Ontario. And this was actually taken along Highway 69 along Eastern Georgian Bay. But there are things being done to mitigate these issues. So one of the things that I do where I work is we identify mortality hotspots. So these are areas where there's kind of a corridor where there's a lot of movement of reptiles across a roadway. So where those spots are identified, you can install underpasses. There's also exclusion fencing. where there's two forms of exclusion fencing. There's this hardware mesh or Animex, which is actually pretty cool because turtles are known surprisingly to climb things. They are determined little buggers. So Animex is kind of like a plastic that they can't climb. Road mortality is also a huge issue when it comes to adult turtles. So adult turtles are more likely the ones that you're going to come across on roads because they're trying to access different parts of their habitat. So whether it's for nesting, whether it's to find a food source or to find a mate. So turtles are extremely long-lived species. It can take up to 20 years for them to reach maturity, which is why it's so important to save adult turtles. So for example, snapping turtles, it can take up to 1,400 eggs for them over their lifetime to lay for them to replace themselves in the population. So I'm going to warn you, there's a graphic image. This is unfortunately a very common sight at my job, that turtles are hit on the road. And this in particular individual was a female. But luckily, one of the things that we do at my work and with some of our partners in the area is we can actually, if any of the eggs are still intact, we will extract them and incubate them with the hopes of them becoming a baby turtle. And in that case, I believe 6 of the eggs that we retrieved from that individual survived. So that was really good. And that's why it's always important, if safe to do so, to try and pull over and help a turtle. There's also the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre, which Tiana is going to be talking a little bit about later. I've been fortunate enough to help a lot of turtles over the years, and this was one I had in our backyard as I was transporting her back up here. So she had been treated at the OTCC, which was their wonderful organization. So the other threat is nest predation. So like I was saying, it's really important to obviously protect and if possible, rescue adult turtles or ensure that they're still part of the population. But eggs and nests are equally as important. So nest predation by foxes or raccoons is quite common and can be quite dense in certain areas, especially along roadways. And the chance, and where these predation rates are so high, it actually reduces the chance that an egg will survive to be less than 1%. So the chance that an egg being laid in the ground, making it to a hatchling, is less than 1%. If they survive that stage of being an egg and they exit the nest, they have a less than 6% chance of surviving their first few years of life. So these guys really don't have great odds. So one of the ways that you can mitigate that is through nest protection. So these are a great way to minimally disturb the area, but also provide that protection from foxes and raccoons and any other predators trying to get them. So this is something that I do at our work. And again, I think Tiana is going to be talking about it a little bit later. But you can also see here how there was a successful hatching. So long as you place the nest protector over top, directly over top of the right cavity, it's a great way to ensure their survival. So the guidelines that I use to create my nest cages for my work is the Canadian Wildlife Federation guidelines. So again, that resource will be shared with you after. So the other threat that is quite concerning is habitat loss. There's two kind of ways. So the first is the most obvious, which is physical destruction. So the actual destruction and removal of key habitat features, whether that's a wetland that's being drained or a forest that's being cleared. It's all very important and unfortunately sad to see. And if that wasn't enough, climate change comes along and is like, hey, we're also going to mess with your habitat. So although turtles obviously have been well adapted since the age of the dinosaurs to take changes in climate, the rate at which climate change is happening is quite scary, and turtles cannot adjust, reptiles in general cannot adjust fast enough. So you can imagine if they've got a wetland that's flooded where they hibernate, but then it dries out so quickly, they really have no chance or opportunity to move, especially during the winter, to a better spot. They also show incredible site fidelity to these hibernation and nesting sites, which means they come back year after year to the same spot to either hibernate or nest. So as soon as those habitats are messed with in any way, they're kind of screwed, which is hard to see. So like I said, as if habitat destruction wasn't enough, climate change comes along and ruins things. But there are ways that those can be mitigated. So one of those ways is through provincially significant wetland designation. So There is a certificate course that researchers can take to become certified to designate PSWs. And this is often associated with, depending on how many species are using or utilizing that habitat and living there, then it can up the chances of it becoming a PSW. There's also protections associated with the species observations under the Endangered Species Act, which is why it's really important to report all of your observations. Again, Tiana, looking at you, she's going to talk about iNaturalist a little bit later. So the other threat that is less well known, but still a major issue is poaching and the pet trade. So there are certain species in Ontario that are highly poached and sought after for the pet trade, but also as a food source. And one of them, the other issue associated with the pet trade is the use of invasive species or non-native species like the red ear slider. So that's a picture of him there. So a lot of people, they think turtles make great pets, which they don't. Let me tell you, they stink and they're not super cuddly. But a lot of people, they realize that too late and they're like, I don't want this anymore. And they release the turtle into the wild. And turtles will survive, but because it's an invasive species, it's never meant to be there. Again, these ecosystems can't handle an influx of invasive species, especially if they're mating and breeding within their habitat. So that's why you should never release a turtle, pet turtle into the wild. So there's places like Little Rescue in Ontario that will actually take red ear sliders. And if you do want to get a pet turtle, consider adopting one from them so that it is a little bit better than getting a brand new baby turtle. So the other mitigations that are associated with poaching and the pet trade is there is legislation in place, like I've mentioned, the Endangered Species Act and the Species at Risk Act, where it is illegal to harass, harm, or kill turtles, and obviously to take them from their habitat. Also in 2017, there was a ban on hunting snapping turtles, which a lot of people didn't even know that you could hunt snapping turtles, but now it's illegal to do so. You can also report potential poaching activity to the M&R tip line. And as always, education and outreach, attending these kind of webinars is a great way to ensure that these mitigations are possible. So obviously I could probably keep talking, but I hope you all get a sense of how important turtles are. And I'm really happy to have been here. I want to say Miiskiikenh again to the Biosphere for having me. And I hope you all agree that turtles are totally awesome.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alana. I definitely agree, but I'm pretty biased. All right. So I'll now turn it over to Cheryl Judge.
Okay. Miiskiikenh, Kinewaya. Good morning, everyone. Cheryl Judge. Midway Kamagago Kwe Indigenous Name Dodem Anishnaabe Kwe Endao Shwanaga Donjaba Abeding Mede Georgian Bay Biosphere Minido Gami Indonje Naki Mumwe manager for CNPP, also recently known as Mumwe Anje Akizuin. So good morning, everyone. My name is Cheryl Judge. I am from Shawanaga First Nation. I live in and from Shawanaga First Nation. I work at Georgian Bay Biosphere. I've been here for a year, and I'm going to be sharing some knowledge today about Miskiikenh. And I want to say miigwech to everyone for participating and being with us today, but also to these awesome kwewak that I work with and how we're able to weave together all these knowledges and the strength from that and being able to share that with you today. So miigwech. So I'm going to share a little bit, two different components that I want to talk about today and the importance of Miskiikenh to Anishinaabe. And although we only have a short period of time, I'm going to try and get as much knowledge as I can to you within that time. But please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, if you further discussion. I'm always open to that as well. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the Anishinaabe and Dodem. And so this is our clan system. This little graphic I made myself yesterday with my kids at home. So we have 7 main clans. And all throughout Medidogami, the Georgian Bay coast, there are more than 40 clans. But these 7 clans make up our governance system. And so we have the Wawashkesh here, And so the Wawashkesh are the gentle people, and they're very kind with words. So they were very much against violence. This is the Gigon. And so the fish, the Gigon, are the intellectuals. And they are also known as the stargazers and always in pursuit of meditation and philosophy. And so this is where the turtle comes in. So the turtle actually is the head of the water clan, of the Gigon, the fish clan. This is the Makwa. And the Makwa is their role and responsibility is the protectors and medicine keepers in our communities. This is the Benashi, and this is actually the Megazé. And the birds are our spiritual leaders. They are our teachers. They are, one of their natural gifts are intuition and knowledge. This one here is the Hmong. And so the Hmong is the loon. And they are the Hmong and the crane, the Ajichuk, those make up the leadership roles within the clan. So they are the decision makers. And so their natural qualities are leadership, being able to speak for the people. And so when those two clans, the importance of the turtle here is that when these two cannot make a decision, or they're having difficulty in arriving at a decision between the two, it'll be the head of the fish clan, the turtle, that will make the decision based on what needs to be for the entirety of the whole nation. This one here, the last but not least, the mighty Awabsheshi, the marten. They are our warriors, they are the gatherers and providers. And so that makes up our clan system. And like I said, there are many, many clans along the coast of Georgian Bay, but this is our 7 main clans, and this is how we provide order and strength within us as Anishnaabe. I'll share that. Miigwech. And the next part I'm going to share is, like I said, we don't have a lot of time, but I wanted to share a little bit about the Great Flood, also known as the recreation story. And so today I actually have some puppets that my little kids shared with me, so I'm going to share that today. So at the time of the Great Flood, before this had happened, in all amongst creation, we weren't taking care of the land, we weren't taking care of each other, and we weren't being kind. And so at that time, Gije Menado, the creator, had thought, this is not what I intended. This is not how things were set out to be. And so at that time, the creator thought that a great flood would need to come and purify the earth, and so that we would learn to be with each other again. And so in that time, the Great Flood came, and it came so quick, it came so fast that none of the animals were prepared, or Anishinaabe were not prepared. And so the flood came so quickly, and Wenebojo was one of the people that was with the animals at that time. And so they found a big matig. And so if you can think of a big tree that had fallen over and was floating in the water because the water was so deep. And so Wenebojo sat on the tree, on the matig, and there were various animals all throughout this tree that was floating. And so, like, we'll think about maybe a wabganoji, a mouse. So there would be a mouse on there. Pasquinaji, even the flyers. So this Pasquinaji, this bat is going to represent the flyers, because we don't have a lot of flyers today. So the flyers would take turns flying and then resting on this log as well. Oh, sorry, I do have another flyer. This is the Megazé. So this is the Megazé. So the Megazé would sit on there and they would take turns, and everybody rested on this log as they had floated and thought about what they were going to do. And I'm going to share this one too. This is Jagug. This is Jagug, and so he's a skunk. And so if you can think of all these animals all throughout the log, and taking turns and taking care of each other. And so they sat there and they had thought about what could they do? What could we do? How can we change things? And so at that time, it was the greatest and best swimmers. had thought if they could go down to reach the earth and reach some original of that soil, they could do something about it. And so it was the greatest swimmers and the best divers that had attempted to do that without success, because it was so deep and it had taken away so much of their energy and breath. And so every time, so we had four animals that had tried, and including the Ngig, the otter, that went down and tried to retrieve some of that soil in the original earth. And then lo and behold, there was a little tiny, with no success, I should say, there was no success from any of those best swimmers and best divers. And so lo and behold, there was a little tiny voice, and that little tiny voice had said, "I'll try." And so all these great swimmers and best divers had turned and seen that there was this little tiny voice. And so I had to improvise. I didn't have a zhashk. I didn't have a muskrat. So this is what I did here. So this is a muskrat. This is zhashk. And so at that time, it was zhashk that said, "I would like to try." And so, the best swimmers, the best divers had laughed and thought, "What could you do? You're not a strong swimmer as we are." And when Abojo spoke up and said, "We should not judge this little guy based on how small he is, and we all have gifts and are able to contribute." And so they let the zhashk travel down and swim. And so zhashk was gone for a few minutes. And they were actually quite worried he hadn't returned. And so they had seen that zhashk had returned to the surface of the water and pulled him over to the log. And so they had noticed that zhashk had died. He had been gone for so long. He had went without water, without air for so long. And it was so deep that he had actually, his life had been taken. And so they took zhashk and they sang some beautiful songs for him to depart and go to the spirit world. And at that time, they noticed in his little tiny paw, they opened, and it was clenched so tight. And so they opened it, and they found that within that palm of the zhashk, he had earth. He had earth down there. So he had succeeded and was able to bring that soil and that original earth to the log, and they were able to think about what they were going to do next. And so we celebrate the zhashk, for doing that for us, for having so much love and giving his life to do that for us. And so what they thought they were going to do with that soil and that earth that they had was that it was Miskiikenh, the turtle, that came forward. And they took that original, that soil and that earth, and they placed it upon the turtle and the Miskiikenh. And the four sacred winds from each direction came, and they had lifted that. And so that's when the Miskiikenh and the earth within the shell of that turtle began to grow and get bigger and bigger. And so that's now what we know as Turtle Island. And then so that's why we hold the turtle in such regard, because it was the turtle and the Miskiikenh that gave their lives to ensure that we would continue to have life as well. So if you happen to look at, and I didn't bring a map today, but if you happen to look at what North America is, it is in the shape of that turtle. So Florida would be at the end here, California here, a little bit of Alaska up in the corner, and then for us here in Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador on the corner. So that's why we represent and hold the turtle in such high regard, because of these things, but also their knowledge as well. The turtle actually holds another part of importance for us when we talk about the 7 stages of life, and for our young people to slow down. Those are the fast years for them. They're wandering and wondering stages, and so they want to do things so quickly. So we try to remind them about the Miskiikenh and get them to slow down a little bit. And so giving them those reminders as aunties and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers and parents. So that's a little bit about the Miskiikenh that I wanted to share, and incorporating a little bit of some Anishinaabe for those other components that I got to share today. I also wanted to share this is our Kids in the Biosphere booklet. And so it's a new booklet this year, has new content. And in the booklet, it actually talks about the recreation story, if you can see it. And we had an amazing young, talented Anishinaabe Nene that created these illustrations for us to depict Wenebojo and the Zhushk, but also Miskiikenh. So you'll see at the end of our presentations, we do have a list of resources and websites that you can access. And so this is one thing that you might want to access. So Miigwech, I think that's all I have to share for now. I'll turn it over to Tiana. Miigwech, Mama.
Thanks, Cheryl. Oh, I love every time I hear you say that story. I'm just gonna share my screen. I think, can you see that? Perfect. So everyone, hi, Tiana Indigenous. My name is Tiana, and I am the conservation biologist for the Georgian Bay Biosphere. I may have started off in the bird world, but I am thrilled over the last few years to be working more and more with reptiles, and happy to share some of the stuff I've learned about how you can help turtles wherever you are. So let's get started. How can you help our turtles? We'll start with the obvious, which is helping turtles across roads. Alana mentioned previously that turtles face unique threats on roads, and nesting females are particularly susceptible to injury and being killed on them. This in some locations has caused populations to be more male skewed, which is a problem because we do need our nice large females there to lay eggs. And the more females laying, especially where predation is really high, means the more likelihood of having successful hatches and those young making it to adulthood. So this is a chart that we created for our Biosphere Turtles on Roads booklet. We're going to follow it along, and it'll help you see what to do when you come across a turtle on the road. So let's say that the turtle you found is on the road shoulder in the lane, but it's not injured. So take a look and see if it's nesting. Does it look like that female there? They will be at the side of the road, digging with their back feet on a road shoulder where it's nice and sandy. And it'll likely be quite stationary as it's laying eggs. If it is nesting, then you can sit back at a distance and observe it. Keep in mind that it can take up to 60 minutes or even more for a turtle to nest. So you can continue watching it from a distance to make sure she finishes and leaves the road okay. You will want to keep a large distance away so that she's not spooked and finishes laying her eggs. If you do have time to continue watching her and are on your own private property or potentially private property where you have permission from the owner, you can place a turtle nest cage over the turtle nest to help ward off any predators. These must have a small opening. So you can see here, there's a little small opening to allow the turtles to leave the cage once they've hatched. These can sometimes be found and purchased as fundraisers for local organizations, or they can also be built at home. So if you visit our YouTube channel, the Biosphere YouTube channel, Alana made a fantastic video on how you can build your own turtle nest protector at home. And it's really great because not only does she walk you through the steps and the materials that you need, but also kind of the different things that you need to know for it. So how to keep it there, how to monitor it, all that great stuff. Now, if you don't have time, that whole hour or more to sit and wait for the turtle to finish nesting, that's okay too. The Biosphere, though, would love to have your observations of turtle nesting, especially if they're on roads. So we suggest you submit your observation to iNaturalist. This is simply as easy as taking a picture just like this one and submitting it to our project, which we'll talk about soon. how to do that. So say the turtle does not seem to be nesting, but it is on the side of the road or in the middle of the road. You can attempt to help it cross. So move the turtles in the direction that they are facing. It's, of course, the first thing you want to do is always ensure that it is safe for you to stop. If it is not safe for you to stop and you're going to cause an accident or have the potential to become injured yourself, it's not a situation in which you want to put yourself into. So make sure it's safe for you to stop. Do not move the turtle from where it is. So don't put the turtle in your car and drive down the road. Turtles rely on areas that they're familiar with, so you want to keep them there. Move the turtle in the direction that it is facing on the road. They're very stubborn and they know where they want to go. So if you don't move it the way that it's going, it's likely that just a few minutes later, you will see it turn around and try to cross the road again. And of course, always make sure to wash your hands or use hand sanitizer afterwards. When you're dealing with turtles that are not snapping turtles, you want to move them exactly like my friend's dad in this picture. Use both hands with one hand on each side of the turtle. Expect the turtle to not be happy. They don't like interaction with us because, I mean, we could be a predator for all they know. So expect them to be defensive. This might mean that they would hiss, they may urinate, or they may scratch you with the tiny nails on their feet as they try and move their limbs. If it's a snapping turtle especially, you'll want to be aware of where its head is. And make sure for the never side of things, never tap or knock the shell, treat them with kindness. Never pick up a turtle that you're not comfortable holding. This could lead to you dropping it, which would lead to injury to the turtle. And also never pick up a turtle by the tail. Like Alana showed before with her turtle shell, their tail is part of their spine. And so holding this could cause major injury for them. Now, when it comes to snapping turtles, we use a little bit of a different approach. Snapping turtles snap on land only because it's the only way they have to defend themselves. Not only are they more uncomfortable on land, but unlike other turtles, which can retract their heads and limbs into their shell, a snapping turtle isn't able to do that. So they have more of them available for predators, which is why they snap, because it's how they protect themselves. So when you're moving a snapping turtle, we have a couple options. On the right-hand side, you can see one being held by the back, kind of the back of the shell. Snapping turtles almost have little handles, is what I call them, under their shell, and it's perfect for gripping. So simply place your palm on the top of the shell, just like is being done in that photo. Wrap the fingers under it to where you can feel these handles, and then you use your wrist to leverage the turtle up like it's being held in that photo. This is a great way to move smaller turtles because it gives you a good control, and it's also nice because you know where your hands are, and so you're not likely to get snapped at. If it's a larger turtle, I, for one, can't hold large turtles like that. And so what I use is what I call the pizza box method, which is what I'm doing in the photo over here with this nice large mama. And so for this, you're going to want to go gently behind the turtle, gently lift up the back end, slip one hand underneath of it, like I have right here. And then the other hand, once it's being moved, is going to go on top of the shell. So you're kind of holding it like that. And it's, I don't know if anyone else holds pizza boxes that way, but it's how I hold pizza boxes. So that's how I like to move the larger turtles. If neither of those methods are comfortable for you, then you can also use an object. So my preference for moving really large or really active snapping turtles is car mats. They have ample space on them and they're readily available if you're likely in your vehicle. All you have to do is simply place the turtle on top, and then you can drag the mat right across the road. There's a number of other objects you can use for turtles to sit on as well. I know Delana has a snow shovel that she keeps in her trunk, and she just places the turtle inside the shovel part and then drags the shovel across the road. There's a lot of different objects that you can use for that. So now let's go back to the flowchart and say that you did find a turtle on a road, and yes, this time that turtle is injured. So you will want to immediately contact the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre. And the OTCC, or the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre, is a turtle hospital that is based in Peterborough, Ontario, and they have a whole network of turtle taxi volunteers. And these volunteers help to get the injured turtle where it needs to go. And so this report that I have on this slide here is found on our website, and it includes all the information that the OTCC needs when they receive a turtle. And the most important part of this is the location. And so I know a lot of phones now can give you your lat and long. And so you want to have that GPS coordinate here so that they can return the turtle to the exact place where it was found once it has recovered in their hospital. And their phone number is also on these so that it's always accessible for you when you're trying to give them a call when you find an injured turtle. So it is likely that the OTCC will ask you to bring a turtle to a drop-off point. So they're going to ask you to take it off the road and bring it somewhere to where their volunteers can pick it up. And transporting a turtle safely is very important to making sure it arrives in the best condition as possible. You don't want it to deteriorate because you didn't do it properly. So we will first want to carefully place the turtle inside a dry, well-ventilated plastic container with a secure lid, because some turtles climb and they can climb out, and you don't want an injured turtle climbing around in your car. So here in this slide, we have a Tupperware, it's just a large tote bin that we have drilled holes into, so there's ventilation. You do not want to transport turtles in water or offer food. And why not water? Turtles love water. Well, it's because turtles' lungs are directly under their shell. And oftentimes in car injuries, the shell is crushed or it can be punctured. And so unlike humans, turtles don't have diaphragms. And so when they get water in their lungs, they don't have the ability to cough it out, which could be very deadly for them. So although they like water when they're happy and healthy, transporting them injured, it should only be done dry. So wash or sanitize your hands after you've handled the turtle, and then we suggest completing one of our injured turtle report cards that I showed you before from our turtle booklet, or that you can print off on our website. We have these pre-made kits available through our Biosphere shop. And you can order these online from us. If you live in the Parry Sound area, they are available for pickup. Otherwise, you can really easily make one at home. All you need is a large tote bin. We have a large size one for our snapping turtles or other larger turtles, and then a smaller one that right here we have our towel in it. And these are for your smaller turtles. And so make sure there's always holes that are in it for ventilation, and then a dry towel can go on the bottom to provide a cushion. And it's really just as simple as that. So we talked before about submitting an observation to our iNaturalist project. iNaturalist is an online community that allows people from all over the world to connect and share their observations, learn what's in their area, and contribute to citizen science. It also allows you to post photos and get ID help. I know I use it when I really want to know what a plant is and I can't figure it out. And it also lets you keep a life list of species you've seen. So if you're that type of person who wants to keep track of every butterfly you've seen or every type of reptile you've seen or bird, this is a great way to keep those lists. And there's a lot of different projects that you can join. And so each of these projects helps a different organization do some of their work. And so the great thing about it is that one observation can be submitted to multiple projects too. So you don't have to take multiple pictures. So when you're joining a project, make sure that you do your due diligence to make sure they're legitimate. You don't want to be submitting sensitive data to Joe's favorite reptiles project because we don't know who Joe is. So make sure that they are legitimate. So a few of the ones that I know in the area that deal with turtles is our very own Georgian Bay Biosphere project. There is also the Canadian Reptiles and Amphibians on Roads project, as well as Start Saving Turtles Today project. And so those are just 3 of the ones in our area that are looking specifically for reptiles on roads. And the great part about it too is that you are contributing to science. So at the Biosphere, we use the data that we've collected for iNaturalist to look at what roads reptiles are most being seen on, are most active on, and it gives us an idea of how to prioritize our work, or also prioritize roads that might need recommendations for future road work and mitigation. So it's super easy to sign up. You just sign up on inaturalist.ca. You can download it to your phone as an app, and then you click search projects, search for the project you'd like to join. So in our case, we'd love for you to join the Georgian Bay Biosphere project, and then you start observing. And it's super simple. And last but not least, helping to reduce poaching and reporting suspicious behavior. So poaching is defined as taking or killing of animals illegally, and this can take many different forms. So turtles are susceptible to poaching because, like Alana said, the pet trade or the food trade. You might find that sometimes biologists are rather secretive, especially with our locations of where we're working and where our study species are. And there's a reason for that. We're specifically trying to reduce poaching. So some tips from us is don't share exact location information unless it's to a reliable source. So for example, those citizen science projects I was talking about. Make sure when you're talking about your locations, it's fairly broad. So, oh yeah, I saw this turtle in the Perry Sound area. Learn to turn off your phone's geotagger. So a lot of our phones geotag photos, and this, when you're sending a photo, could have a location put on it that people can see. And so that way, if you do share your photos of species at risk, these locations are not attached to it. Also, report illegal activity online that you see. You might be on Kijiji or a Facebook page and see that someone is trying to sell a turtle that's a native species. I know in the last couple of years, I've reported a number of them, which is pretty sad. So report that. And also, you may be driving and see a vehicle at the side of the road. It might look a little sketchy and you see people in a wetland. That to you seems like suspicious behavior. So there's a high chance that this could be one of us doing our work in our wetlands, though usually our vehicles are marked and have a ton of turtle stickers on them. But it might not be us. It could be someone poaching. And so use your best judgment when calling, and we're just happy to know that more people are looking out for our turtle friends. So at the bottom of the slide, I have the MNR tips line, and that's the one that you can call. I have it plugged into my phone as one of my contacts, just for any time I might need it. Now, before we end, I just wanted to quickly highlight one project that the Biosphere and our partners are working on currently. And so through the community nominated priority places funding, we have begun a Roads in the Biosphere project with the Mamwe Anje Kiziwin project. In 2020, priority roads for this project included Highway 529, so that's up here near Point de Barrel, after a number of public inquiries about turtles using this road for nesting. Another priority road moving south is Scarivore Road, and this was for a construction project that we were able to take part in, and I'll talk about that a little more on the next slide. And then moving south again, we also surveyed Highway 559 to Killbear, as well as Nobel Road. And this was to survey installed fencing along Nobel Road to see how it was doing over the last couple of years, as well as monitoring the 559 for hotspots where reptiles are crossing. And this report was given to the MTO as they're going to be upgrading this road shortly. And so it was great that we were able to gather more data and then recommend locations where mitigation could be used. So our surveys included a number of collaborations between different stakeholders, but especially on Skerryvore Community Road. This project, we worked alongside a construction crew to mitigate threats to nesting turtles. And this included developing new methods for excavating turtle nests. So we removed nests where construction was happening. We trained their workers on species at risk training, so how to move turtles out of their work site. And we tested new mitigation methods. Currently, we have a student from Laurentian University who is testing these methods out that we're trying. And we also incubated and released over 1,000 baby turtles back into these wetlands. And this project also took the opportunity to incorporate Indigenous traditional knowledge into our daily work. We had bilingual signage. We held turtle release ceremonies for all of the stakeholders who were involved. And also included the offering of sema or tobacco into our daily road surveys. And so these sema offerings, our team was able to acknowledge and give thanks to creation for the knowledge that we were gaining from this work. And these additions to Western methods of biology represent a step that the Biosphere is making towards incorporating two-eyed seeing approaches to conservation work that we do. And as Delana said, as we were getting started, this is incorporating Indigenous ways of knowledge as well as Western ways of knowledge and learning and sharing. So as the lead on this project, it was personally really wonderful to see our construction crew eager to learn about more turtles as we went on. They wanted to know all about the turtle life histories. They loved some of the turtle facts that we had for them. And they developed a sense of responsibility the longer we went into the project. They even started taking pictures to show their kids and their grandkids what they were doing, and they were really proud of it. It's our hope that small projects like this along the coast bring a greater sense of responsibility towards the environment, and also carries on to future projects that they may be involved in, or even just at home. So I'm really excited to see how our work continues through the summer, as we're going to be doing another number of roads this year, including Skerryvore Community Road again. So wave hello if you see us biking, and you can learn more about this project at momwaygeorgianbay.ca. And so now, before we take any questions, if you enjoyed this webinar and are looking forward to more, we do have 2 scheduled. So please feel free to join us again for Best for the Biosphere Gardening with Native Plants. This is going to be on May 6th at 10 a.m. And it's to learn about some of the native plant species in the biosphere as we are about to, well, we're having our upcoming plant fundraiser. We're taking orders right now, but this is a great way to learn about some more of the plants that we have and also about gardening with native plants. And then on July 14th, we have lessons from an Ontario Biosphere in Phragmites management and habitat restoration. And so this is to learn more about Phragmites, which is an invasive species, and how you can control the spread. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Tiana. We're going to have some more webinars in between these 2. There's a bit of a gap in June, you've noticed, but we're just in the process of booking them right now. And I can tell you there will be one on septic health as well for cottage and homeowners, and there will be a couple more invasive species ones as well. All right, so we have had a couple questions trickle in, and I just noticed the timing. It's exactly 11 o'clock, which is fantastic. So I invite everyone to stay for this Q&A portion if you are able to. And I think we'll just get right into it. There was a few questions early on that I think we'll start with. one question about roads and turtles. So, culverts. Is there a way to improve existing culverts and road structures to encourage safer crossings where alternative passes are cost prohibitive or development may be detrimental to the ecology of the area? It's a long question. I guess, are there ways we can improve culverts and road structures that are cost effective and maybe cheap and easy, I think would be the key.
I can take that one. I don't think there's any way to, oops, I'm just going back to the question, do it for culverts that are existing, just because they are what they are, and you do have to dig up the road to be able to change them. You could put in fencing that leads to the culverts to encourage more species to use them. However, fencing does have a lot of maintenance required, and it is costly. And in areas where there are lots of driveways, there's a lot of starts and stops, so it's not as effective. But the work that we're doing on Scary for a Road actually is kind of along the lines of trying to develop more cost-effective ways of doing this work. And so what we did was, instead of using fencing, we put in a riprap design. So riprap is kind of larger gravel. And this larger gravel is placed around the culvert and then along the shore, along the wetland edge. And so what we're hoping is that it was a cheaper method that was more attractive to the township, because there is no maintenance required for it. It's a one-time cost. And it also doesn't have as negative effects with frost heave, with snow removal in the winter, all that fun stuff. And so we're looking to see if it is effective at kind of rerouting turtles from nesting on roads or getting up onto the road. So that is something that is to be determined as the project is getting closer to an end. So I hope we have a positive result from it.
There's a question, just you had mentioned the riprap. So Mandy's asked, do turtles or hatchlings ever get caught up in the riprap? Do we know that?
There is the possibility that hatchlings would. We tried to use a size of riprap that was larger, that they wouldn't want to dig in it, but small enough that turtles wouldn't likely get caught. But that is one of the things that we're going to be assessing this year, as that is a possibility. But our hope is that if turtles aren't nesting on the road, then there's not going to be hatchlings getting caught there, because they'll be nesting elsewhere.
So next question, what type of wetland are blandings turtles commonly found in? Would they be found in wetlands connected to lakes, some of our area, medium-sized lakes around here?
So I can probably answer that one. So yeah, so they are found in wetlands that are connected to open water or inland lakes. So those would technically be considered coastal wetlands. And honestly, I'm always surprised when I find snapping turtles sometimes, or blandings turtles, because I'm like, how did you get here? Where did you come from? Why are you here? Blandings turtles especially, they're the most terrestrial turtle of all the turtles that we have in Ontario. They make quite lengthy overland movements to get to different habitats. So they're surprisingly a very terrestrial turtle. But in terms of the wetland types, they really like shallow, dense sedge and cattails, but some spots where they can still come up and bask on some of the vegetation that may have fallen over or that's dead. So any kind of like hummocky spots where they can access sun. But obviously not super dense as well, because they do need that sunlight to help warm their bodies. So yeah, so those kind of areas. But like I said, I'm always surprised. Some places I should say I'm no longer surprised by where I find them, but every time it's like, all right, well, there's a turtle here.
We have a couple questions about iNaturalist. There's one question: if you don't have a photo, is the sighting still accepted?
You can still put the sighting in for yourself. However, it is not accepted by our project because our project needs sightings that are research grade. And so research grade means that a number of people have confirmed that sighting. So that is the species that you say it is, which requires either a sound clip or a photo to have that designation. So you can still put it in for sure for your own purposes, but it won't be able to be used for citizen science.
And following up on that, how broad should citizen science location tagging be? Close enough to help researchers, but far enough away to keep the turtle safe. And I know there's a couple built-in things to iNaturalist for this.
Yes, so we want those sightings to be as specific as you can. Our project allows us, so I can go on and see where these coordinates are myself, and others who have gone through species at risk training in our organization can see these. However, other people can't. When species are designated by iNaturalist as being specifically endangered, all sightings of them are hidden, and I think they're given I think it's like a 10-kilometer by 10-kilometer buffer zone for people to not know where specifically it is. And when you're submitting a sighting to, if it is a species that you would like to keep, that you want to have a higher privacy setting on, iNaturalist does have the built-in feature where you can have sightings be public, be private. There's another one which I'm forgetting at the moment. But if you do have those sightings as private, you still share it with our citizen science project, we will still receive the location just fine. It's just no one else will be able to, which is great.
Yeah. One of the advantages of having it designated a project and not just trying to sift through sightings.
Yes, exactly.
Alana, I think the next two I'll direct to you. How long after a turtle has been hit by a car can you still salvage the eggs? And who should we call, or sorry, should we call you to come and retrieve and incubate the eggs?
Yeah, so unfortunately it does have to be relatively quickly, and this is for any turtle in general that's been hit on the road, especially if it's a really sunny day. Turtles will, if they're not hit super bad and there is a chance of saving them, they'll basically just go into their shell, and because they've obviously been hit, it's extremely traumatizing. They get scared, they go into their shell. So they can actually, for lack of a better word, cook pretty quickly on the roadways. So you do have to kind of be relatively quick, but if they're still in the turtle cavity, in the turtle's shell cavity, they have a little bit better of a chance of making it. So that's why, again, if it's safe to do so, stop for every observation, just in case there are eggs inside. But it does have to be relatively quickly. I would say definitely within a few hours if you can, or if you do find one. And even if you're unsure, still try to call somebody. So the next question was about who do we call? So where I work at Magnetawan, we are a first response station, but we do like to follow how the Ontario Turtle Trauma Centre works. So we're listed as a first response station under OTCC. So how the trauma center works is they have turtle taxi drivers all across Ontario, and they have an incredible system, a call system of organizing turtle taxis to get these turtles to their facility in Peterborough. So because we're listed as a known location and they have our cell phone numbers and know how to access us, we still encourage everybody to call the Ontario Turtle Trauma Centre, and then they would likely get in touch with us to get that turtle safely. Or there might even be somebody closer that can get that turtle to where it needs to go. So whether it's sometimes difficult to get them all the way to Peterborough in that day. There are some other rescue centers. There's some in Sudbury, the Aspen Valley Wildlife Center just south of town of Parry Sound. They've started accepting turtles as well. So whether they do the extraction or they do the egg collection or they make the turtle comfortable if it's still alive or keep it in a place that the eggs are still safe, So in a moist environment, again, not wet, just moist, then they can prolong that, how long the eggs are left in the turtle. But those kind of calls are best to direct to the Ontario Turtle Trauma Center, and then we're brought in when needed. As much as I'd like to give out my cell phone number to everybody in case you find an injured turtle, because I certainly would, I'm not going to. And if you do see me, or if you do see same thing, I've got turtle stickers all over my car, but certainly stop and I've done that a few times and I can usually help people out. But yeah, hopefully that answered the question. Sorry, it was kind of a long answer.
That's terrific. The next question is from Sophie in Victoria Harbour, who lives directly on the water. A lot of turtles in the area. Anytime a snapping turtle nested on my lawn, a predator has dug up and eaten the eggs. Should I protect all the nests on my lawn, up to 4 at a time? Sounds like a prime spot for the nest protectors we talked about. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I've even seen some designs. So turtles, especially snapping turtles, if it's a good spot, they will sometimes actually nest on top of each other. So there's no way of one female turtle knowing whether or not a turtle's already laid there. I've only seen this a few times where there's actually combined nest cavities and there's a few damaged eggs because a female lays on top of somebody else's nest. So there are ways you can make the design of the cage bigger to incorporate a larger area. I know in the video, the ones that I make are 2 by 2 feet. I would encourage you to watch the video if you'd like to build your own nest protectors. And depending on where you are, there might be some that are locally sold through organizations. But definitely, if you see the turtle nesting, and the way to kind of confirm if they have nested is it'll be covered again. So you'll see some disturbance. Snapping turtles are relatively easy. I call them lazy nesters. They leave quite the evidence of a nest. So you can place the cage, which is big enough to encompass a large area, on top of the nest. If you can catch them in time before a predator gets to them, which is always difficult as well. But yeah, it's totally up to you if you'd like to cover them all. I will say, don't be afraid if they don't hatch or you don't see them hatch. It could be a number of reasons. The incubation temperature might not have gotten warm enough. The eggs might have not been fertilized, all that good stuff. So don't get too nervous if you don't see them hatch. But it's a great way to protect them from predators.
And just a reminder, the video that Alana's referencing, and tons of other information that we've been referencing, all these links, you'll have them in your inbox tomorrow, as well as the recording from today. So another question, this one's from Gina, asking, where can I learn more about the turtle hatching ceremony or turtle release ceremony? And I'm not sure specifically what ceremonies those are in reference to. But last year, the Biosphere did, we held a ceremony for the first release that we did. Cheryl, I don't know if you want to say a few words about that, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So this was the first time a ceremony had been done. So we had to, gently think of a way to honor the turtles and do that in such a kind way. And so all of the work that we did was done with kindness and respect, but really wanted to be able to honor, all of creation. And so, and that turtle, wanting to ensure that it was going to be returned to its original wetland, but also praying that it continued on its way to a good life, because as we know that, Tiana and Alana have shared, that it's not such a high rate for the turtles to ensure they're going to have a long life. So we just did our part to ensure that we could send them off in a good way. We put our sama down, we smudged, we had a little tiny berry feast just to honor that life for that turtle and carrying out in a good way. And that's pretty much what we did for the turtle ceremony. We did a similar one up at Magnetawan First Nation with Alana and Corey. And so it was just approaching it in the best way that we could, and to make sure that we were sending off those turtles with good thoughts and in a good way. So that's pretty much what we did for ceremony. I hope that, does that answer your question?
I'm not sure, but I think it's helpful. Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay.
And I just want to acknowledge too, not a question, but a comment from Marilyn, who's joining us from Shawnee First Nation. Just in reference to some of the comments we made about poaching the turtles and things like that. Turtle is very sacred, and how the words we use to speak about her and how we store her gift of shells. It's a working tool that needs to be addressed in ethical protocols. Miigwech, Chi Miigwech, Cheryl, that's a really excellent point. Another one I just want to acknowledge, on a canoe trip in the Massasauga Park, we had 7 different snapping turtles visit our site, actually climbing out of the water, coming around the fire and meal site. The assumption was made that previous campers had been feeding them. Is there any way that some turtle education could be giving out to people paddling in the Massasauga? Very likely it could have been people feeding them. If the fire and meal site was on a beach, it is also possible if you're there in the spring, they might have been up there looking for nesting sites. That park tabloid that we all use for fire starter, I'd be surprised if there wasn't already information about not feeding the wildlife in there already, but a really good reminder and a really excellent point that, yeah, in parks we need to be very conscious of our behavior, and it honestly, not just parks, it's never okay to feed the wildlife. So I have another question that I think a lot of people will be interested in. We have 1 or 2 snapping turtles hanging around swimmers at our dock. What should we do? Is it safe for children?
Tana, do you want me to take this one? Yeah, so contrary to popular belief, toes and fingers are not a large diet of snapping turtles. Snapping turtles, a lot of people assume that they're quite aggressive, that they're very angry, that because they snap, they're bad news. But snapping turtles only do that as a defense mechanism, obviously, and when they're eating as well, they need to bite things, but they do not actively seek out human toes and fingers. Even if they did, which again, they don't, this bite of a snapping turtle, especially the common snapping turtle, a lot of people assume that we have alligator snapping turtles, which we don't. But the bite of a snapping turtle, a common snapping turtle, is barely enough to break skin. They might latch on, but even then, that's a defense mechanism. So if you're taunting the turtle, if you're poking them, if you're even sometimes moving them across the road, they put up a bit of a fight, but that's because you're interfering in their space and they're scared of you. So of course they're going to snap. But if they're around your dock, they're kind of like the sea turtles of the Great Lakes. They're the gentle giants. Like I said, they do not actively seek out and hunt humans or will be biting your toes when you're swimming. It's just like any other fish or anything in the water that you have to be aware of, that that's their home as well. But no, it's completely safe. I've heard stories of people, they just swim right past them or they swim under the raft. Just let them go about their business. They don't want to be around you. They might be curious to see if there's a lot of splashing and activity, but then once they notice that there's nothing there, they'll move on. So it's not something you should be scared of at all.
No. And one thing you can do too, I've heard of a lot of people keeping their bait buckets, so they're like minnow traps and things, in the water adjacent to your dock. That can spark their interest. Maybe don't do that, and you might see them swimming around. It might make you more comfortable. You might see them not swimming around. It might be more comfortable. And someone just messaged us in the comment too and said they accidentally stepped on one in the mud before and the turtle did nothing. So I love the anecdotes. A question about egg laying. So what month do turtles typically lay their eggs, and then how long is it before they hatch? And is that the same across all species, or is there variation?
I'll take this one again. So turtles in Northern Ontario, so up along Georgian Bay, they typically start nesting in June. It might be late May, depending on the year, but just because we're just that little bit further north, we have a shorter growing season, it's a little bit later into June, the start of June. And every year is different, which makes our jobs quite difficult. But yeah, so as soon as they come out and start nesting, that nesting period can last anywhere from a week to 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes a month. I've also seen turtles starting to nest into July. So after they've nested, it can take anywhere between 60 and 90 days for the incubation to happen. And again, that's a huge variability, but that's because there's huge variability in the weather that we get. So if it's a super hot, dry summer, that might speed up the incubation process. Also, depending on where they laid. This is why a lot of turtles choose roadways to nest, because they're the perfect incubation system. You've got the heat coming off from the road and the pavement that's heating that nest cavity and speeding up that incubation process. And that's kind of common across all species. There are 2 species of turtle though, the Midland painted turtle, so the common one that you're most likely to see, and the northern map turtle that have actually evolved. The hatchlings will sometimes stay in the nest cavity over the winter. They're the only species that have a specialized enzyme in their blood that allows them to be, I think it's anoxia or freezing tolerant or something like that. So their cells don't actually break when they freeze. So those 2, and that's why I say as well, don't be too afraid if you don't see them coming out of the nest, if it was a painted turtle or a northern map turtle that nested there, because they might still come out the following year. And it's a really interesting way that they've kind of evolved, but that's also why they're able to exist at this kind of northern range limit, is so that the hatchlings have a better chance the following year of surviving. So yeah, hope that answered the question.
Yep, awesome. There's another question, where can we buy or get the turtle nest protectors? So it really depends on where you are in Ontario or North America. If you're in the Parry Sound area, the Biosphere, we usually have a handful of them for sale. We can't ship them, but you can pick them up from our office. So just follow us on Facebook for when those might be available. If you're not in the Parry Sound area, unfortunately, it's not something that Canadian Tire carries, at least not yet. There might be conservation groups, conservation organizations that might be selling them as a fundraiser. They're very easy to build though yourself. You can give them away as gifts too, you can build a bunch. So the guide to building them is that video that we referenced earlier. We've also in the past worked with the high school. If there's a high school in your area, in the wood shop, not this year, not right now, but it's a good wood shop class project too. So just the last question right now. So just a shout out for any last questions too. Somebody's commenting on what looks like a turtle nesting box on the waters in the Point of Barrel area, and it had turtles resting on it. Can you tell me more about these boxes? I'm not familiar with what that would be. Maybe
I might know what it is.
Okay.
There was a program, some people might still be doing it, a few years back, where there were loon nesting platforms. And so what I'm thinking this could possibly be, I don't know of any nesting platforms for turtles in that area, but I do know that there are some loon nesting platforms. And so it's basically just a big wooden square. It'll have a chain attached to some sort of anchor somewhere, and loons can build their nest on it. It's probably in a shore, close to the shore, in a low wake area. So that's my bird brain thinking of what that is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so the turtles would be using that for basking though, not for nesting,
Yeah.
nesting on the water. Just give it about 5 seconds in case there's any last questions out there. We still have most everyone listening. And it doesn't look like there are any, so that's terrific. I'm really happy that we were able to stay on time today and that everyone was able to, so many people were able to join us for the full duration. Oh, are there any sites or anything that people can check out near Mattawa? Ooh, you guys familiar with Mattawa? I'm not sure, Heather. I'm not sure.
I would say, yeah, check out the iNaturalist project and see if there are any projects in the area, or just as you're driving, if there's any wetlands that look really turtley awesome. You can keep an eye out there for turtle crossings potentially, but in terms of, I don't know if she's looking or asking about program specific. I'm not sure about those.
Okay, so please everybody look for that email tomorrow. Make sure it might have gone into your spam folder if you don't see it by tomorrow night. So please keep a lookout for that, because there'll be so much useful information in there about iNaturalist and nest protectors and all of these things. And yeah, Miiskiikenh again, thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you have learned something and can use this spring too, because it's almost turtle nesting time. I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything at the end.
Just please break for turtles, give turtles a break when safe to do so. And yeah, every observation, every sighting, even if it's obviously one, unfortunately, if the turtle's been hit, it's still great information, not only for us, but for researchers and for future road mitigation. I know we just touched on a few very short things and small projects here, but there's an incredible amount of research, especially around road ecology specifically, about how to improve our roadways, where to best put in mitigation measures. So every observation counts, and we really appreciate those who participate in projects like iNaturalist.
Yes, and we really appreciate everyone taking the time to learn about our turtles today. And it's that learning that helps you respect, especially our snapping turtle, and in turn protects them. So thank you so much for joining us.
I see somebody put in the chat that they're going to rethink their thinking about snapping turtles. So yay, it's a win.
Good. We'll just put up some more pictures of baby snapping turtles, and then maybe that'll change some opinions too.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you at a future webinar. Take care.
Bama Pete.